Those of you that are out here know that dozens of states have patterned their program after this Ben Franklin program that was started some 30 years ago. There was a governor in the past that used to say that Pennsylvania should be a leader among states and a competitor among nations. I was listening. And in fact, that's what Ben Franklin has been, a leader among states and a competitive model among nations. And I've been proud for 18 of the past 20 years to go through a few iterations of that program, but the focus and the mission of the Ben Franklin program has never changed. And 30 years later, it is as strong as it ever has.
What hadn't been recognized up to that point is that we really had many of the answers available right in front of us in places like Pittsburgh and the Lehigh Valley, State College, and Philadelphia. Our universities had been spinning out great ideas and groundbreaking innovations for years. The trick was to decide to incubate and grow those ideas here in Pennsylvania, not in the Silicon Valley or the Research Triangle down in North Carolina. That's how the Ben Franklin Partnership began, as I understand it, and how the Ben Franklin Technology Partners later came to exist. Governor Thornburg was the governor who made this order and made it clear, and he was a visionary. He said, get the economy moving again and do it in a way that will prepare us for the next 50 years from now. Well, we're 30 years into that, Governor, and I'm going to renew the request that they continue to do it for the next 50 years. So we're going to put 80 years onto that. Entrepreneurs are the new heroes of the workplace in this country. They are the men and women who take a good idea, they need venture capital, and they try it out in the free market. There was a groundbreaking study that showed that the fastest growing source of job creation, as we all know, is small business, especially among new companies. So the state had a role to play in that. Our university campuses could provide the incubator space. The Department of Commerce, as it was called then, now the Department of Community and Economic Development, would provide grants and loans, the seed money for larger and leverage of investments. This wasn't about picking winners and losers in the new economy. It was really about providing a kickstart and then letting the free market work its own magic. It worked for several reasons. The biggest one was that through 6 governors from both parties and a legislature that changed majorities several times, we stayed the course. I suppose you could say that the Ben Franklin Project was a 30-year overnight success story. And while Governor Thornburg was there at the beginning, Governor Casey and later Governor Ridge and others understood its value and kept it moving forward. Now, yes, we may have changed the name during that period of time, but it continued to move forward. And the results, if you look back on them, are impressive. Since 1989, the Ben Franklin programs have helped to create 89,000 jobs, with 20,000 of those jobs just in the past 4 years. It has added $6.6 billion to the economy. And in fact, for every dollar that we invest in Ben Franklin, we get back almost $4. Last year, working through the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, Pennsylvania invested almost $15 million in 174 companies, allowing them to leverage $525 million in additional funding. The program has saved jobs, it's created new ones, and it has spurred the creation of dozens of new companies across the Commonwealth. We have some tough budgets here now in the past 3 years, but the one sector that I have protected and will continue to keep safe is the Ben Franklin Technology Partners. In every corner of this Commonwealth, there are men and women working at good-paying jobs and creating additional jobs because of the Ben Franklin program. This program was a clear plan for the future, for the next 50 years, and we just added 50 more on. Born of one of the most confusing times in our past, it has been the proof that Pennsylvania knows how to get back to work. So I want to thank you and thank Governor Thornburg and Governor Ridge and the governors that participated and the legislature for what they did back then and continue to do. And let's keep this plan having more anniversaries like this for the next 50 years. Thank you all for allowing me to speak.
we're competing now with countries around the world. A good example of that is if you look at what other countries are doing, and frankly, I bet many of these countries have looked at Ben Franklin and modeled their efforts after it. You look at a country like Finland, where they have a similar program to Ben Franklin called TECHUS. And TECHUS invests, if we were investing the same amount of money in the United States as TECHUS in technology-based economic development, we'd be at $35 billion a year. That gives you a sense of the scale that other countries are putting into this. Singapore, for example, graduates more PhD biologists. They graduate about 60% of the number of PhD biologists that the United States graduates every year. So think about that. This little tiny island state has made a big, massive bet on the future of biotechnology. So that's really what's at stake today, both here in Pennsylvania and around the country. So we're really pleased to have two great governors here to talk about this. Governor Thornburg, I want you to start us off with, you know, this was really a somewhat unprecedented action for you to take back in '82. Most governors back then, if they were facing the nature of the Pennsylvania economy, they principally would have just done outside recruitment. They would have gone outside, tried to do some trips, and I know you did that, and that's important, but they would have stopped there. And you didn't stop there. You took a bold move of creating a new model of economic development in Ben Franklin. Can you talk a little bit about what made you think about that and why you took that course?
Principally, what made me think about it was the fact that we had a statewide unemployment rate that was almost 15%, that we had lost our basic industries, iron and steel in particular, which had really dwindled away to almost nothing. And there was a great concern across the state about where jobs were going to come from in the future. I remember a quotation from Dr. Samuel Johnson, who at one time opined, "Nothing so concentrates the mind as the prospect of imminent hanging." We have 4 of the top 50 research universities in the country here in Pennsylvania, and tons of engineers that have been cranked out by our universities across the state. How we could use those resources and apply them in a way that would create jobs. Well, to make a long story short, we came up with the Ben Franklin Partnership. I'll share with you a story as to how the Ben Franklin Partnership got its name. We were struggling with some replacement name for the State Science and Technology Board, Foundation, or whatever it was called. Sitting in my office one day, wringing our hands, and in my office, arrayed around the top of the, just below the ceiling, were portraits of those who had preceded me in office. It was an intimidation kind of thing, because it included William Penn and Ben Franklin. And I looked up at that and I thought, you know, this is a man who embodies what we need. Ben Franklin was a scientist, an inventor, a businessman, an educator, and a damn good politician. And those are precisely the kinds of resources that we need to bring to bear in utilizing this undeveloped mass of know-how and commitment that existed in our universities, to be sure, but in our entrepreneurial community and among those who were in business and creating jobs in Pennsylvania. I said, what do you think, guys? Maybe we ought to name this the Ben Franklin Partnership. That is all I'll take credit for, but I will take credit for it. And in coming down here today, I thought I've got to honor this day in a particular way, and I dug out of the mothballs my Ben Franklin Partnership necktie. And with the help of my wife, found some matching socks. So. I'm proud of the fact that the Pennsylvania Economy League report released today showed the impetus and the continual driving force that this combination of public-private partnership has created the kinds of opportunities that this state has looked for a long time. So happy birthday, Ben Franklin, and may you have many, many more.
And I want to ask both of you this question because it is in a way unique to celebrate an economic development program for 30 years. They're notorious for lasting a term or two and then jettison and something else comes by. And Ben Franklin has real legacy, and as I said earlier, it's become a model. There were just 12 officials from Abu Dhabi visiting last month at Ben Franklin Pittsburgh, so people around the world have taken notice. For both of you, what do you attribute the success of in a bipartisan sense?
I'm just going to say this, you celebrate the Ben Franklin, but you need a visionary. You need somebody who will take on the paradigm shift. Someone who say we need to think differently. And Governor, you were that person at the time because everybody else was scrambling around trying to figure out how we can bring manufacturing jobs back. Oh, you wanted to do that, but we needed a leader, and we had Dick Thornburg who said, look, it's got to be a paradigm shift. The competition's global. We're either going to be transformed by what other people do, or we're going to be transformational agents ourselves.
You can look at all the numbers, all the statistics, all the kinds of inspirational speeches that we all gave. But when you can give guys the dignity of a full-time, promising employment to care for themselves and their families and be stand-up guys in their community, that's success. And I never forgot that, and it inspired me all through the rest of the time that I was in office to think about the ultimate consumer of these projects that were being put on and funded and helped by the Ben Franklin Partnership. And that's the average Pennsylvanian, and there's no harder working group in the world than the cohort of people we have in this state who work in these future-oriented jobs that really make it happen.
And you asked why has this program received so much, why has it sustained itself and normally has such strong bipartisan support? One, it works. And there's no better glue than a program that has this proven results, and everybody wants to be with a winner. And this program has proven to be a winner, particularly when you take a look at the kind of jobs that is most often generated by Ben Franklin, with a salary probably 25 to 35% on the average, in excess of what others. But the other portion, I think, is if you take a look at Ben Franklin in Pennsylvania, you got the 4 regions, and there's something very, very appealing for community leaders and job creators to be able to control their own destiny in their own communities and their own regions. The fact that you don't have it being run, and listen, out of Washington, D.C. or Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but you drive it down to where the entrepreneurs are, where the communities are, to those communities and regions. So I think the fact that it has been so successful, that the kind of jobs that are created are those that we hope every young man or woman in Pennsylvania aspires. And the fact is that it's more local than state, and I think that is a certain and that enables the community in that region. Look, one of the beautiful things about Ben Franklin is they got a lean team inside, but they got a network of all kinds of folks within that region to help out. And so you've got these local job creators, the local entrepreneurs working with a regional establishment that gets access to capital, but they also have the human capital, the intellectual capital of people in the community to help them grow the jobs. And I think that's one of the more appealing features of it, and why you have R's and D's historically been very supportive. It's theirs. It's locally owned and controlled. They like that.
I think that one of the characteristics of this program, as you point out, and as Tom Ridge stated so eloquently, was the fact that it was a bottoms-up program. It was not a top-down dictated out of Harrisburg or Washington. It was strictly bottoms-up. And the governing bodies and the people who ran these programs at the local level were local people. And the hand of government, if applied ever, was applied in a very gentle way to provide some guidance, direction, or once in a while admonition about the way the programs were being run. And that was a distinguishing characteristic. So it survived and prospered, and thanks to those who were willing to stand up and be counted in respect to its survival. It really has a good case study, and the best case study I've seen on it was done by David Osborne, who is a chronicler of business development in this country, where he called it the finest economic development program in the country. And that's pretty good praise to have for something for those of us who work at the state level.
Amen. And I would argue today there's a bigger gap between that entrepreneur, that man or woman or that small group who working in that basement in the garage in order to access capital and than there's ever been before. I mean, it's pretty difficult for a small businessman or woman to go in with a disruptive technology, and they're beyond the concept, they're beyond the design. Maybe they made a prototype, but obviously there's no earnings, there's no income, but they need a few extra dollars to build a couple other prototypes, maybe to market. You can't get access to that capital, and normally it's not a lot of money. And everybody talks about how liquid we are, how much money is available out there for capital these days. Well, I'm just telling you based on my experience working with some small companies. I wish we had access to, they're a little bit bigger than what normally shows up at Ben Franklin, but the fact of the matter is I think it's really difficult today because of the political environment and the new regulations on those who would historically have loaned those dollars. I think it creates an opportunity, and it's all the more reason to find additional funding to support programs similar to Ben Franklin, because these entrepreneurs, these innovators, they can say all they want about how liquid the market is and how much money is available in investment. This is even pre-angel investment. This is not mezzanine financing. This is that $250,000, that's that $100,000, or whatever it is. And I think one can make a good argument in the 21st century, you need more Ben Franklins and more financial support than ever before.
You know, just to support what you said, Governor, over the last 20 years, the United States venture capital industry has doubled in size. And yet the amount of money going to what are called zero and first stage deals, those early stage smaller deals, has fallen by half. So there's a lot of venture money out there, but it's going to mezzanine, it's going to late stage, it's going to big deals. Those are easy to do. And the smaller deals, the earlier stage, the risky ones,
we're almost risk averse. I mean, it's a tragedy. I mean, we're almost risk averse, and it's too bad.
I remember one experience I had in one of the iron and steel plant sites in western Pennsylvania, and it was replicated elsewhere. The credo there always was the mill's coming back. The mill had shut down and was in a temporary repose, and you ask people about what kind of economy they were going to look toward to create the jobs necessary to support themselves and their counterparts in the community. Oh, we don't want to think about it. The mill's coming back. It sometimes literally took the dismantling of the mill, and this happened in a lot of communities. It took the actual leveling of the mill to make folks realize the mill wasn't coming back, and those jobs were gone forever. Now, in the forward-thinking and positive communities where that happened, they've latched on to this new economy. They've latched on to the notion of creating future-oriented jobs that aren't going to depend upon the national economy. And that's what the strength is of these programs, the Ben Franklin Partnership and the types of programs that Tom and the SSTI are supporting across the country.
And then one other component of Ben Franklin that most people don't understand is you just don't show up with a pickup truck and they put a few bucks in the back of the truck. I mean, it's a very competitive enterprise. I mean, and they're going to screen it very carefully. They are not risk averse, but they want to make a calculated risk. It's a smart investment in your future. So for all those who would be concerned about, well, we just give the money to Ben Franklin, they just parse it out willy-nilly, that's the furthest thing from the truth. It's very competitive to receive even that modest level of funding. And again, it's such a success story that hopefully not only in Pennsylvania but other states will support it and until we can find ways to break loose some of the additional federal dollars so we can have a true federal-state partnership where we let the final decision-making as to who should be funded and how they should be funded to the Ben Franklins of the world rather than the bureaucrats in either Harrisburg or in Washington, D.C.
We've had such a love-in for the Ben Franklin Partnership today. I think Tom and I would be the first ones to acknowledge that there are a lot of unmet needs that are still out there. And both of us have suggested the need for particular innovation in the areas that we've discussed today. So it's a good time to celebrate, and it's nice to have 30 years under our belt. But those of you who are involved in this on a day-to-day basis, you've got to keep pitching, you've got to keep thinking, keep innovating, and maintain the leadership role that Pennsylvania has today in this area. And I can't believe that the #1 priority in this state today, as it has been for the last 30 years, is to create future-oriented jobs for people who are trained and educated in our schools, colleges, and universities to make a contribution to the overall national economy. And the record is there to see. It's replete with success stories and very little criticism. We heard a little bit of criticism every now and then, particularly in the early days. But this is such a popular program, I can't think that a little bit of proselytizing and lobbying and evangelistic undertaking can't turn this around. I would certainly hope so. There's no easy answer. It's all, 3 yards in a cloud of dust when you're dealing with the legislature. We all know that. But sometimes you can get a breakthrough. And I think if there's any program that deserves full funding in this state, given its goals and given its record, its progress, it's the Ben Franklin Technology Partnership.
I think probably just to add to the governor's thoughts, you've got an independent source, Pennsylvania Economy League, that has championed and will continue to champion the success of the program.
So I want to thank all of you and really thank our governors. As I said, from somebody on the outside, we've looked at Ben Franklin for a long time as really a model for how to do technology-based economic development, whether it's in a state or even a country. So I wish you success going forward, and I hope other officials in Harrisburg understand that point. So please join me in thanking two great governors.